This is not the tone that I've set over the last 4 years in this building. It's not the environment I've worked so hard to achieve. But this is the exception. It is not the rule of what's happened over the last 4 years in this administration.
Now, of all the things that Chris Christie said in his nearly 2-hour press conference yesterday, that line and that theme may be the hardest one to swallow and the hardest one to convince the public of. Now, keep that soundbite in your head as you watch and listen to the Christie soundbites.
Big shot. You're a real big shot. Shut your mouth off. You're a real big shot. Shut your mouth off. You're walking away. Yeah, keep walking. Keep walking. Keep walking.
Are you stupid? On topic. On topic. Next question.
If she wants to get on a plane and come here to New Jersey and ask me if she wants to examine me and review my medical history, I'll have a conversation with her about that. Until that time, she should shut up.
Let me tell you something. After you graduate from law school, you conduct yourself like that in a courtroom, your rear end's going to get thrown in jail, idiot.
Let me use a word that is indelicate. And there's some children here. I see one. There may be more. Cover their ears. Bull. Okay?
Now, to these exchanges from Christie staffers, time for some traffic problems in Fort Lee. The response, got it. Or, is it wrong that I'm smiling? And then, when someone shows even a little remorse, writing I feel badly about the kids, well, it's the Christie bully culture factor. When Wildstein responds, well, they are the children of Buono voters. I mean, chew on that one for a while. They're talking about what's going down, and that's the answer. Now, those are 3 people that are not connected, Chris Christie says, to him. He didn't know about this, and there's no evidence right now that says his fingerprints in anywhere on it, yet at least in this investigation. But nonetheless here, a lot of people say, stop. For 4 years, he's created an environment, a culture where this kind of a thing could happen, let alone that it could have been fostered. Now, the woman leading the investigation in the state Senate, she certainly thinks so.
You know, I originally thought, well, the governor's responsible for this kind of crazy atmosphere at the Port Authority. Now we're finding out that obviously the atmosphere exists right in the governor's office. To think that you can use the most important infrastructures in our area to punish a mayor, this is so bizarre that it is very hard to come up with an explanation for it.
That was a conversation I had yesterday with Senator Loretta Weinberg. Thank you. I've been struggling with that for the last 3 days, and thankfully not in the interview. And that is nothing to what we may have heard here today from a former governor who went off on Christie in an interview. And Andrew, just for people who are confused, this was a governor who assumed, he's now a member of the legislature, he was a governor for a short period of time in the interim, but he's afforded all the benefits that any governor would have here. And we're talking, of course, about Dick Cody.
He was a state Senate president who became governor in the midst of crisis. And if you know Dick Cody, you know that he usually does not pull his punches. But he was clearly hopping mad when he talked with Salon, saying Christie knew this was bull. And obviously there's been a cover-up. The money quotes from Cody. This young woman, Bridget Kelly, didn't do this in a vacuum, he said. Somebody came to her with this idea. Who was that, he asked. The arrogance of those emails, he said, goes beyond the pale. The governor should just totally be destroyed over that kind of arrogance directed to the citizens of the state where he is the leading figure, the governor. It's just sad and pathetic that people thought, obviously, that this is what the governor would want. He created this climate about that he has. We destroy our enemies, alleged enemies. In other words, Cody says, anybody that hasn't agreed with us 100% is an enemy and has to be stamped out. The climate of fear, this reign of terror, he has to take responsibility for it, referring to the governor. And here's where Cody really lets loose. Quote, I mean, you read about the story of the head of the Firemen's Union who criticized the governor very mildly on a radio show, and former Senator Baroni, who was involved in this incident, called him up and said, hey, the governor wants me to call you. He heard you on the radio last night, and his message is go blank yourself for what you said. Now that's saying to Baroni that this kind of conduct is the way that we conduct ourselves against somebody who doesn't agree with us. So Baroni took it to another step, Cody says. This has been an ongoing part of the administration, the way they attack anybody who doesn't agree with them on policy or anything else. Rich?
You know, Dominic, you've been around a lot of folks, both when the camera lights are on and when they're off, and it's always interesting, I think, when the staffers first come in to when the administration evolved, whether it's a governor, a mayor, or whatever else, they seem to take on the personality of their boss. I was talking to you guys off camera. I remember when he had Spitzer staffers that were with him in the AG's office, and how they changed when he did his steamroller routine here, when he got elected with an overwhelming margin, and then, you know, he was in his first year before he self-imploded. They changed with him too. They took on the persona. It's not an exaggeration to say they take their cues from the top.
They do take their cues from the top. They do become the personality of the chief executive in that office. I mean, I've seen situations, Richard, off the record here. I've seen situations where county organizations will say, this person's not with us, have the DA tie him up in an investigation. I won't say which county, and I've seen those things happen in New York City. And the investigation will show nothing. It was just to tie him up and say, don't disagree with us. But this is taking it to a whole new level. And so they do take on the personality of the staffers, but having covered politics for 30 years, I am telling you, there is no way in hell that this woman would do this on her own.
Well,
none.
The idea that this is the most traveled bridge in the world, the GW, and this wasn't for an hour. This was over 4 days, okay? I mean, the tie-ups, everybody was reporting on the tie-ups at the bridge. So I ask you, that this is the part I don't get. Christie, this didn't happen all of a sudden Tuesday out of thin air. A few weeks ago, we got resignations over this at the Port Authority.
Right.
So the governor goes into his staff and says, everybody, you've got here an hour to either go to my chief of staff or I think his chief counsel and tell them exactly what you know if you're involved with it at all. Nobody went to him, so then he said, good enough. Is that how this usually goes? Because me personally, I'd want to see if there was any emails emanating from my office that were going to the Port Authority before I put myself on point and making all the jokes. Remember that, oh yeah, I'm the guy moving the cones. It didn't seem there was a lot of due diligence from a former U.S. attorney to find out what was going on in his office.
Well, my suspicion is there was intentionally no due diligence. I totally agree. I was chief of staff to a conference leader in the Senate as well as chief counsel. To behave in this way and not do the due diligence, in other words, you see a story about your guy in the paper, the next day you call everyone in the office, regardless. It's your responsibility, and say, what did you know? What's the email? Are we have problems here? How can we deal with it? All these months have gone by, nothing, until these documents were about to be released. Then all of a sudden, Christie has to have an explanation. Where has he been? They did no due diligence. They did not want to find out the truth. They did not want to talk to the people and find out what they knew.
So could he, I don't know the answers. I'm curious. If he wanted to, could his office have checked to see if any emails, the email correspondence between the governor's office and the Port Authority, could they have done that?
Well, first place, these were his appointees. He could just call them up and say, give me your emails. They report to him. Basically, these appointees, if he didn't want them, he could get rid of them. They owe their entire job to him.
Yeah.
So he doesn't, you know, whether he had legal authority under New Jersey statutes is less the point than he could just call up and say,
give me your email.
Give me your email. And the person knows they need the job, so they give the emails. And then they have to go explain it. They did not want to see the emails, I believe. They did not want to hear the conversation. And they did not want to hear from her who she got the direction from. And credit to Pat Foy, the governor, Cuomo's appointee, who called up the next day and said, what the hell's going on here?
But I don't know how many people would really begrudge a chief executive like Chris Christie the aspect of plausible deniability, which is I don't really want to know everything that's going on because I don't want to have to answer the question if I get the question. I think we all assume that Governor Cuomo or President Obama or anybody, President Bush in that position, there are things that they don't want to know and that their staff doesn't want them to know, so that they don't have to answer if they get the question.
He went out in front of the press, Andrew. We talked about this. And he didn't just say, to my knowledge, nothing's going on. He belittled the people who had the temerity to ask the question.
Absolutely.
And he made jokes about it with the cones. And he knew the dislocation that it caused within. Now, we also know from the stuff that came out today, and again, there's so many documents in there, that it does at least appear that there might have been efforts to cover up some of this. To at least,
there's-
I mean, so
Absolutely.
while there's no finger being pointed at the governor, there were efforts to how are we going to mitigate this? How are we going to talk about this? So this, again, if anyone out there believes that 3 people and only 3 people total knew about this, I have got another bridge for sale, okay? And trust me, I've got a good price on it. Last thing, I know we're going to go to a break, but again, I think his problem is going to be forgetting even the bridge. They're going to be emptying out the documents. We already know Cody lost his security detail because he had the problem of agreeing. We heard what happened to the fire chief. Senator Kane, the son of the former governor, didn't even strongly disagree with the governor. The governor goes to an event in his district and purposely chooses not to invite him. The list keeps going on and on. These are just the ones we know about that have been reported.
List.
All that stuff's going to come out now, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. Everyone was quiet and well behaved
Because they were
because
afraid.
the guy was popular in their districts at home. There wasn't a lot to be gained by going against him. Now, first place, when someone's a bully, everyone has a story. Everyone in their district has a story of somebody who got in his way once. So that's all going to come out, and they're going to have much less incentive to shut up and hide it.
You're also going to have the press double-checking every story that they've heard.
Absolutely.
The
And
honeymoon is
every
over.
time the
It's
Governor
over.
Christie, slammed them down in a press conference saying, what are you doing? Get out of here. If I had one of those questions, I'd be going back and double-checking that story.
Okay. When we come back, we'll be joined by our good friend Evan Thies here, and the subject is the politics of this. We've already talked about how the governor is obviously in crisis mode right now and his ability to govern right now, but what about the politics? Let's face it, Chris Christie was, at least in many eyes, the front runner for Republicans, and he certainly was acting like it. In fact, running the Republican Governors Association, which, trust me, is a really powerful post. What are his prospects in 2016, and can he turn this thing around? We'll talk about that after this.